into Freshly Pressed this morning, as I've been joined by two gentlemen this morning. Good morning, Gbubemi Atimomo, this morning as you join us.
Good morning, Omas. Good morning, Chibs. Good morning, Lagos.
And next I go to the man whose birthday it is today, but then you might forgive us, but for patriotic reason, he's doing this for the service of the fatherland on his birthday. And I say good morning to Chibuzor, Nwaezeapu. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much, Omatseye. Good morning, Omatseye. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Gbubemi.
Just thinking anyway, I just see that you share the same birth month as President Barack Obama. Yes, former President Barack Obama. But then to balance that out, you share the same birthday with the former military head of state of the Nigeria president. That's Ibrahim Babangida.
Yeah, we have some interesting people in August. Gbubemi also has his birthday in August, so we're quite a number.
Okay, guys, so let's dig into the papers this morning as we begin with Chibuzor. Let's get into this. So you're going to give us 25 birthday squats and probably 20 birthday push-ups with this next story I throw in your direction from the Vanguard newspaper. Let's see you do this in 2 minutes, max 3 minutes. President Tinubu to ministers: serve Nigeria, not regions or state. And that's the Vanguard newspaper headline screaming out this morning. Your time starts now.
Okay, so what we have is the president has called upon his 45 ministers to serve the country with integrity, dignity, and deliver in their various assignments, instead of serving their state or region. So he's asking the new ministers to serve on a national basis, serve the country and the entity known as Nigeria, and not focus on their individual states or their regions. From the point of the president, actually, it's this is, and I'm going to probably try and step aside the other things which he's asked them. He's talked about the current nature of where the country is at currently, and he's asking that they implement overdue reforms to restore the citizenry's belief in government. And I like to hold on to that piece where he says about restoring the citizenry's belief in government. One of the major challenges, and it's very, it's a good thing that the president is actually asking that the ministers should serve the entity called Nigeria, and that and in this, what I understand by this is that basically he's asking, see yourselves first as Nigerians, then you can see yourselves as coming from whatever state you come from or region you come from, that this is national service, which is quite nice, but also the cynic in me always likes to say this is quite rich. Many times I see politicians who are quick to jump to sectional, and a lot of politicians are quick to jump to sectional and regional and even ethnic interests while campaigning and electioneering. Then after the battles have been lost and maybe lives have been lost after the battles have been won and lost and maybe lives have been won and lost, the property have been won and lost with it. When we get to the positions, we all try and call everybody into, let's come and rebuild the country. Let's come together as a nation. How I wish we actually had those calls first during the electioneering or even pre-electioneering, and we carry that message on through the election cycle, and that we are first Nigerians and want to build Nigerians. But it also comes to the question of, do the individual Nigerian citizens see themselves as first Nigerians? We talked a lot about Niger and the closer links that a lot of Nigerians in that part of the country have with Nigerians than with the rest of Nigeria. So, business and where you have a USP, what is the USP that Nigeria is offering its citizens? I would hope that the president will spend a good chunk of his 4 years to actually try and build this concept of citizenship, where Nigerians will first see themselves as Nigerians.
No, Chibuzor, before you go on, USP, you would like to break it down for those at the back so they can be on the same page as we go.
It's basically a unique selling proposal. What is the entity Nigerian offering to Nigerians? What do Nigerians see that, Americans talk loosely about what we call the American dream? What do Nigerians see is the attraction for being Nigerian?
Yeah,
that is what each Nigerian needs to be able to see that and hold on to it. We need to build that concept of being Nigerian. And I'm not saying that, hey, don't forget that you're not a Yoruba man, or you're not an Igbo man, or you're not from Anyoma or wherever you are from. those things are what make us individually unique as a country and as a people. We should also respect and celebrate them. But at the end of the day, we have this umbrella called Nigeria, which is where we sit. And I see much value about being Nigerians than being just sitting in our smaller corner. So I hope the president actually takes it upon himself also in retrospect and also looks at it as something he wants to drive and build in the remaining parts of his tenure while he remains president afterwards.
All right, well said. Thank you so much, Chibuzor, for that opening. Now, let's go to Gbubemi this morning with this next headline coming from this paper, moving away from ministerial swearing-in, and as our eyes would be watching the ministers as they hit the ground running to see if they perform as the president told them to, because he had talked about the expectations of Nigerians. But Gbubemi, work on this for us from the Punch newspaper. Invest in education, food, others to address poverty. The Chinese envoy, that's the ambassador to Nigeria, is urging the federal government.
Okay, so for those who may not know, Nigeria, I'm not quite sure if we still hold that distinction, but as near as yesterday was, as near as last year rather, was declared the poverty capital of the world. And even as far back as about 2 months ago, there was a report that was released by the World Poverty Index that said that we had over about 133 million people classed as multidimensionally poor. And so the multidimensional poverty index is one that measures the percentage of households in the country deprived along 3 dimensions: monetary poverty, education, and basic infrastructural services. So people who technically have absolutely nothing. It's, for me, looking at this statement that was made by the Chinese envoy, it was done at the launch of the Hausa edition of the book that was written by the current Chinese leader. The book is titled Up and Out of Poverty. It was published sometime in the late 80s. And it documents how he was able to lift over almost 100 million Chinese people out of poverty within a 10-year period. Now, according to them, they defined extreme poverty along 2 basic needs and 3 guarantees. So the basic needs are food and clothing, and then the 3 guarantees are compulsory education, basic medical care, and safe housing. If we look at these 5 indices, we can clearly see that these are areas where the Nigerian government along the years hasn't really done much. One issue I've always had with government is when it comes to poverty, we tend to focus on quick wins. So we've had programs where we've given people money every month. We've loaned them small amounts of money without necessarily tracking what they've been doing with that money. So it's been, quote unquote, like throwing money at a problem rather than sitting down, planning long-term as to what to do, which is something that we seriously lack. I would like to offer this as a charge to the current president to be able to sit down and come up with a long-range plan, to be able to lift people out of poverty. This is something that we haven't seen. What is the government going to do about healthcare, for example, making it accessible for practically everybody? What is the government going to be able to do about housing? Every year we talk about people who live in accommodation that's not suitable enough to be called housing. Yet we talk about the housing shortages. There's a disparity in that area. What is the government also going to do about education, which is a big problem? We have a huge chunk of our young people out of school. In fact, that's another area where we top the charts, with the number of young people out of school. And most of these young people are in the north. So what is the government going to do about education? Because without education, really, we can't lift anybody out of poverty. The government can only do so much by setting in place, the enabling environments that other people will build on. But as individuals who are poor, there's nothing they can necessarily do by themselves if they're not educated enough to be able to identify that they're even poor in the first place and seek for better opportunities for themselves. So this, my charge, just like the Chinese envoy had done, is to the government to say, what is your long-range plan to be able to lift people out of poverty? What are the areas that you're going to look at that will directly affect the people and ensure that gradually we lose our spot on the as the world poverty capital of,
Okay, hopefully that medal will go to some other countries in the southeastern parts of Asia sometime. Maybe we'll throw that medal away, hopefully, when we do that, because really, when you solve the problem of food, a man's problem is half solved already. When food is solved, really, that's the first way to talk. So it seems the charge by the Chinese envoy, it's really in line. There's nothing missing in addition to what you've mentioned now. But let's get the listener.
So can I just add something quickly?
Yes, you can, but let's quickly get the listener in quickly. I'll be with you shortly. You can be part of this. We're expecting the messages to begin to rain in, pour in on the platform 0809-444-0981. Once again, 0809-444-0981. WhatsApp messages only. So just do this for us in less than so
quickly. In the previous story, we are talking about the president asking Nigerians, or asking the ministers to see Nigeria first before their states and their regions. The book that is being shared currently in the North was written by the Chinese premier about 10 years ago. And if you are knowledgeable about the Chinese system, obviously they have an ideological system that is tied to their political system. And the book basically outlines what his vision and what his plans were. One of the things that needs to happen also in Nigeria is that the people at the grassroots levels need to understand what is this government's vision. To the latter, they need to understand it's not just about saying at the top level, you need to sink down so everybody knows that we're on the same boat. We have a unique mission, we have a unique direction, and we are all going there together. That level of information, that level of thinking needs to happen in Nigeria for us to move ahead.
All right, well said. But again, you must ask a man who hasn't fed his stomach, does he have time to read this book that is being launched? But anyway, that's a question for another day. Let's get on to this next one, Chibuzor. It calls for your attention. From the Guardian newspaper, it says, Southeast truck drivers losing 194 billion naira to illegal taxation. Chibuzor, help us break this into pieces like your birthday cake we expect.
So this statement came out from the southeast region, and it's come from the AURTW, their heavy truck section of the AURTW. So they've talked about there are various things encapsulated in this story. They've talked about the high costs of diesel. They've talked about, but the crux of the story is actually about. They've talked about the bad roads, but the crux of the story is actually about the multiple taxation they're receiving. So they basically said in this story they're losing over 194.4 billion to illegal and multiple taxation. They said one of the things that's led to this or is being taken advantage of is the worsening state of roads along that corridor. They've called particular routes, Port Harcourt being to Okene, Kogi, Calabar to Taraba, Enugu to Tukpa, in Benue State. They've talked about how some of their members have been kidnapped. They've talked about how various members have been attacked in their vehicles, how so-called tax collectors from the various, and I would assume from the various local governments and from the various states, will jump into their vehicles midstream, remove parts of the vehicles, and to try and get whatever levies or whatever funds they have. They've talked about even that where we have truck drivers having to spend 14 days crossing into Okene in Kogi State when they're traveling around Bini Auchi. Now, what this story basically, for me, the major thing that stood out for this story is obviously the amount of money that is being lost. It's being lost largely because of the inefficiencies in collection and the inability of these guys to be able to do the businesses they're supposed to do. And it has a ripple effect because these guys are basically moving stuff that is required for other users, which are input into other processes. Now, it's basically a logistics service. Once you interrupt this, somebody's going to, both the sender and the receiver are going to have to incorporate this cost into their production. And who feels the burden? The guy who's going to collect the finished product or whatever service or is being provided. Now, a lot has been said in Nigeria about multiple taxation, and this is just a common example. We see this every day, even on the Lagos roads and everywhere. We see this where we have a multiplicity of agency, multiplicity of guys. A truck going between Lagos and Redeem Camp, for instance, will probably be stopped by some local government who brings out a flyer and tells us to pay all sorts of levies from Dosbin to whatever, simply because of his traversing the border between two states. We've seen this so-called drive by many states in trying to up their revenue and basically unleashing multiple taxes on people on the guise of upping revenue. There needs to be a larger discussion around this, and I think the president has actually kickstarted some of those discussions. A lot of the arguments have always been in people not paying the taxes they ought to pay, but what I found out is there are two sets of pay taxes like in Nigeria. The guys who earn salaries because it's taken from them. Then we have all sorts of informal taxes. In fact, a lot of these guys who pay informal taxes, such as these NURTW guys, will probably pay far less if they were paying formal taxes than what they are paying now. But the major loss is the loss to the economy and the loss to the jobs that could be created. You know, we can talk all about the roads. The roads are a major problem. I got married in Makodi years ago, and I used to go through the Enugu, Otukpa, the 9th mile Otukpa road. It's the closest road actually between Enugu and Benue State. But that road is a mess. You do not dare to try to go through. So I can't imagine heavy-duty vehicles going through it today.
Okay.
So really, there needs to be some investment into some of the roads. That's given, but we need to sort out this problem. The states and local governments need to take responsibility to drive it.
Thank you very much, Chibuzor. That's, of course, if you factor in the Ologbo axis of Edo State, which is, it takes you 5 hours at max now to get to Delta State. These are too close from Benin to Warri. It's a nightmare right now. And the irony of it is the taxation that goes on that bad spot, because the community boys will come out from there and begin to tax people who are stranded on those bad portions of the road. But let's leave that. We see messages piling in quickly. Let's get some of them in as we come back to Gbubemi in a bit with this story. I see this message here saying, while I agree with Chibuzor, his focus should be more to the ministers. President Bola Tinubu is an icon of national integration, and his past points clearly towards the ministers, towards that the ministers are the ones who need to do more to drive his agenda to lift Nigerians. Thank you, freshly pressed Ayo from Lagos. Next comes this one from, James from Asaba. Let me give the federal government and Tinubu a surprise realization. Nigerians have no expectations whatever from any of his ministers. What we, the people, know is that we are not tickled by their words. And leopard do not change the sports. That's from James from Asaba. That's on a Tuesday. This skepticism needs some binding and casting. Let's get this next one in from Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo saying, good morning. It's interesting that the president is asking his new ministers to serve the country instead of their states. But the president has constituted his cabinet based on the old structure that has failed the country in the past. Some of the ministers are already making autocratic statements instead of taking a good look at the issues to be tackled, such as I would demolish houses, land use act, and all of those in the center of the country. There is no way these new ministers can be different from their predecessor, Ajayi Olunilua from Magodo. Dami sent us an image of some persons there. It says the ability to speak from both sides of the mouth is a trait that is inbuilt in Nigerian politician. A president with a political vehicle that was called Southwest Agenda is calling on others to have a national vision. It goes on. That's from Dami from Anthony. Okay, let's break now. Gbubemi, this one is for you. Let's get back into the papers. This one says from the Punch newspaper, Akwa Ibom community laments as oil spill destroys farms.
Oh, so it's a pity we're here again. Oil spills have always been with us and they will continue to be with us. However, what makes the difference is how quickly issues of oil spillage are addressed. Now, this Akwa Ibom community is the Ibiete village in the Odoroikot community of Impatenin local government area. And they experienced this oil spillage sometime last month, July last year. They also recall that they have experienced previous spills in 1996 and in 2012, which is just a little over 10 years ago. However, so the issue appears to be the fact that now ExxonMobil, who is responsible, and Okoro Oilfield Amni International Development Companies are yet to offer them compensation for the oil spillage, as well as mop up the community, mop up the areas where the oil spillage has occurred. So one thing, you know, for me with all these oil spillage issues is it appears as though nobody really holds the perpetrators accountable fully. You know, one would assume it's clear. You can see the oil spillage, you can see the effects on the people, you know, you can see the impacts on them. There's nothing to debate, you know. And, you know, once you know that an oil spillage has occurred, you know, it's something that you should hop to quickly to try and address, as much as possible, clear up that environment, even if you're trying to sort out compensation later. The lack of speed at which this appears to have been addressed is quite appalling. Like I said, it happened last month, so this is in July. This is at least 2-3 weeks or more after it happened, and it appears as though nothing has been done in regards to cleaning up this oil spillage. This is not good enough, Aside from also holding the state governments accountable, which also should, hold the JV partners as well, NMPC, accountable for ensuring that they enforce whatever laws and requirements and regulations exist to make sure that all companies attend to these issues immediately. I usually don't like comparing, with foreign situations, but I remember when there was an oil spillage somewhere along the coast, close to the US or so. I think it was British Petroleum. I can't remember which oil company it was. There was a lot of hue and cry, and they attended to it immediately. We could see their response to cleaning up the spillage. That's sort of like the kind of response that we expect to see here. What I would even advocate for is, whilst not downplaying the compensation issue, because that's also important, the focus should be cleaning up the environment, because the effects of that oil spillage will live with us for many, 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 many years and generations. And the quicker the oil spills are cleaned up, the lesser the negative impacts on the community and future generations.
All right, thank you so much, Gbubemi. Let's get on to the next paper now. The Vanguard newspaper is waiting for Chibuzor with the headline: Gunmen abduct 8 NYC members while going to camp in Sokoto. National service, the clarion call to the fatherland. Chibuzor, let's get your response and help us understand the enormity of this incident.
Okay, this is one of the stories that never seem to go away from us. Unfortunately, it tends to live with us, and over the last 10 to 15, 20 years, it's become, I would say 10 to 15 years, but around 10 years, it's become quite prevalent. Back in the day, the only thing you needed to get worried about when you went this far was largely accidents, road accidents, or robberies, not banditry or kidnapping. What has happened here is we've had some young people, the future of the country, as we say, and they are not able to go from one point of the other country to the other side of the country to serve their fatherland, because that's what basically the NYC program is about. It's about, going to places where you are going to somewhere that is different from where you have grown up with or where you're schooled up in, and to offer that period of of a year to serve the fatherland. So traveling to Zamfara, they were along a highway to Zamfara State, coming from you en route to Sokoto State, en route Zamfara, when they were attacked and intercepted along the highway in Zamfara. They said reportedly there were 11 corps members were taken, 3 are the gunmen. The driver of the vehicle was also abducted, according to the story. There are various eyewitnesses talking about, what they saw, how it happened. There's some talk about the parents of the kidnapped, one of the kidnapped people being contacted for ransom. The interesting about the police spokesman in Zamfara is saying that he was going to verify the incident as at when the reporters had reached them and before to get him back. And for me, it just throws another light of if the story had already gone out to the press, while the police is still trying to verify. Well, obviously, police have to go through their videos, and same thing has gone through, but the NYC spokesman hasn't responded. So, like I said, this is rather sad, and it's something that we see recurring over time. I don't want to focus on, there are people who have debated about ending NYC or not ending the NYC, but I don't think it's a discussion about the use or the disuse or what the structure of the NYC today. I think it's a question actually, or the major issue on the table is about the security of Nigerian citizens when they move around on the roads from place to place within Nigeria today. That is where the problem is.
All right.
We can
Chibuzor.
spend time another day looking at the merits and demerits of NYC, but that's not it. So I'm praying for strength for the parents, and we hope that this turns out well at the end of the day and these people get back to their homes.
All right, Chibuzor, thank you so much. Some messages pouring in now. This one says, good morning, everyone. The government needs to learn it is not food that Nigerians want to eat, but the ability to be productive enough to earn their food. Education is key to growth as well as the creation of an enabling environment, not free handouts. Fabian is the one speaking from Ekwe. And this one is a birthday wish for you. Happy birthday, Chibuzor. That's from Ayo in Lagos. And that's for Chibuzor, the birthday man. Or I wouldn't say boy. Would you subscribe for that? Boy? Birthday boy?
Boys, well, boys, men, boys don't pay bills, but
even boys to men have grown to become boys, men right now. But anyway, let's get down to that. Okuda from Igondo says, good morning, the crew. Wike should know that we are in a democracy. That's the minister for the FCT, and not in a military rule. He should stop these undemocratic threats. That's from Barrister Dan Okuda from Igondo, more like saying Abuja is not Port Harcourt. Anyway, our final stories for you, Gbubemi. If you can do this one for us in a minute, we'll be happy. And this is from Daily Trust. Daily declared state of emergency on malaria. Reps panel urge federal government.
Yes, so what I would just like to say is I concur. You know, malaria is something that we've all lived with all of our lives, and there's nothing to say that we cannot eradicate it in the country. As usual, we need a long-term plan to be able to get this done. I'm happy that the current Minister of Health, Professor Pate, is a professor of public health, and at one time was Executive Director of National Primary Healthcare Education Development Agency. So I believe he has some sort of experience, you know, working with that. I know he's also served on a malaria-focused committee, you know, as well. So I'm hoping that, you know, he can add this on as one of his core focuses during his tenure as Minister of Health, and hopefully we can have malaria gone for good.
Well, that's about the size of Freshly Pressed this morning, but enough time to just squeeze in 2 messages if we can. I see Yemi saying, word of advice for the new minister of the FCT on assumption of office. He's saying, please tell Wike to be calming down over beating the teardrum. Good morning. Word of advice from Yemi to Wike as he assumes office. Then Dami from Ikeja comes back with this one from Anthony. The problem of insecurity comes down to the fact that our security structures are designed for interception to protect the systems of power rather than the various peoples of Nigeria. And Chidi, our final message saying, good morning, Wike thinks making more enemies is the way of life. I see his statement yesterday as political witch hunt. He should remember that he will not remain in power for life. Have a good day. Chidi from Ikotun. Chibuzor Nwaezeapu, thank you so much and happy birthday once again from the entire team out here.
Thank you, Masha. Thank you, Smooth. Thank you, Lagos. Gbubemi. Catch up with you later.
And Gbubemi Atimomo, thank you also for your time also.
Thank you, Max. Thank you, Lagos.
And that's a wrap on Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1 FM. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. Good morning.
Investing in your tomorrow. The headlines.